thank you so much again, Ulysses and Graham, for allowing us into your beautiful, beautiful home. In fact, I think the first time I met both of you was in this home. I think Alia invited me to dinner at your place, and I remember, sitting at the table being like, wow, who are these people? And so I'm so glad that we've gotten to know each other over these last couple of years. And now we're doing this. And so what I'd like to do with you guys essentially is just have a really friendly conversation. You over the your relationship in these many years kind of built up such an impressive collection and such a vibe. It's not just about all these impressive artists and the cool pieces. It's like when you enter your home and you really understand like what these people are about. It's a real aesthetic. It feels like it's an extension of your personalities and your relationship. And so I think that, many of the people watching, myself included, will not recognize all the artists and pieces. And so, I'd certainly like you to point out the ones of note that you think we should definitely look up on our own. But more it's about how do you even put something like this together? How do you have a lifestyle that really encompasses art and design and creativity, and in your case, irreverence and sexuality as well. All of it is really kind of embodied in this home. So I'm really grateful. Would you each like to introduce yourselves and kind of like how you relate to the art world just very briefly before we go? I'm Tré Borden, the host. Graham, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Graham Steele. It's my husband, Ulysses De Santi. We moved to Los Angeles 5 years ago, and I had just left, was it 5? No, Jesus, 6 years ago. We're old. Yeah. I moved to Los Angeles to open Hauser Wirth, an international art gallery that was a huge challenge for me because it was actually the largest gallery space in America. It's 120,000 square feet and had an amazing time. Just like a postage stamp.
You can miss it easily.
Exactly. And so was running that space for Ivan and Manuela Wirth, and about basically this time last year, COVID sort of presented me with an opportunity to rethink the way that I position myself in the art world. I think our house actually has a lot to do with it, not just that like my new office temporarily is my kitchen, but also that, this kind of blend, this mix of art and design, but also the fact that we are above and beyond anything else. We are collectors and we are people who live like this. This is not a showroom. These things are not for sale. This is the way that we like to live. And it's something that we love bringing collectors, friends, artists, people, the people who hang the art will sit and have dinner with the people who make the art and buy the art. And so that's very important to sort of who we are. And I think it sort of shows in the house and over to the house.
I can attest to the fact that people definitely kick it in this house. So it's not just a showroom. People feel very relaxed as well. So
and I think that's very great because we are not overly precious. We love everything that we have and we're very careful about it. But at least from the design point of view, of course, the art is a little tougher. You have to be a little bit more careful. But from the design point of view, so I'm Ulysses De Santi. I'm a Brazilian furniture dealer. So the entire house is all of the furniture is Brazilian. Most of it is most of the pieces are vintage pieces. We have a few contemporary artists that I love. There you have, of course, one of my favorite pieces of all time, which is the Zhao Zuping bar cart, and it's just an amazing sum of so many different aspects of what defines Brazilian modern design is just a combination of Zhao Zuping being of Polish descendants and having immigrated to Brazil at an early age, but bringing all the know-how and all the technology from back home, but getting super inspired by the raw materials, the domestic woods that you would never see anywhere else. So this is all rosewood, which in the 70s had become completely endangered. So it's the combination of like European technology and of course design with the lifestyle, the easiness, the vibrance of Brazil, and the materials and the shapes. The curves are quite amazing, and he was one of the first people that really developed the technique of steam press wood. So like when you see, it's all one piece of wood. Yeah. So it's all one piece that he steamed into the shape that he wanted. And he worked with another partner at the time, Julio Kaczynski, who was actually, so the two of them are very much responsible for that technique that Delphine went on to use throughout his whole career. But yeah,
and also, I'd like to note that that's also a bar card. So all of that design, yet designed for fun, for function. You know, that's another part of Brazilian culture that stands out.
It's funny. There are people who come in and are like, "Oh my God, can we sit down?" And you're like, "I mean, yes. It's a sitting area."
Yeah. And it's so funny because, and this is one of the things, because I find all of these pieces in Brazil, me and my partner, Cecilia Tenor.
Those chairs were my idea. I would just like to point out that I was the one.
And they shift, right? Like they're kind of dynamic chairs, if I remember.
Yeah. The blue ones, the Eisler chairs, the seat, you can play around and you can, so you can move it and you can use it as sort of a back. It's a very multifunctional chair and it's very comfy. And it's great. But the beauty of all these things is that by the time I found most of them, they're in such bad condition. And I have all my team in Brazil that we use to restore everything, to reupholster everything. So I think that's part of also why there's not a lot of, it's not that we're not careful, but we want to use all these pieces. We want, like, at the end of the day, as much as I think of design as art, and I 100% do, that bar card for me is a sculpture.
It drives us nuts when you go into someone's house and you have a house tour of like a beautiful sitting room that like no one sits in.
So you're like afraid of. You're like, I can't afford to sit down here actually.
Chair and like I purchased it for $2,000 billion, and you're like, cool, okay, we have very expensive chairs, and it doesn't fucking matter if you're like, what's the point of having something that promotes the dialogue? I mean, look, those cube chairs in the right-hand corner. I mean, those are some of the most tactile, most gorgeous chairs. They're also super fucking comfortable.
Super comfortable.
We have people drinking red wine in them. You know, it's very funny because in between the two of them, it's actually not an end table. It's a very beautiful sculpture. Well, it's a very interesting sculpture by Mona Hatoum about, this is called Round and Round, and it's slightly difficult to see.
It's okay. It's hidden in there.
It's hidden in there. You can just sort of glimpse, and people put their drinks on this, and it is a bronze sculpture of these small men. I mean, Mona's entire career really looks at displacement, at physical displacement, emotional displacement, displacement due to national identity. And she's Lebanese and left right before the Civil War for a 5-day vacation that turned into a 3-year stint in art school in London. And, you know, coming out of that, people will put a thing of a drink down. Yeah. And it's not that I just want to say, oh my God, that sculpture costs X, or, oh my God, that sculpture is by Mona Hatoum. You're like, you know what? There is something that like it does. It plays a functional role in our lives. Yeah. And so it's the kind of thing where, you know, look, if someone is putting a drink down on the Donald Judd plexiglass that's going to scratch, I'm like, maybe we're not going to do that.
Sure.
But it's something where you're
gently
like,
let them know.
Pieces. And I've seen people like put glasses down on this and go, oh, what's this? And I'm like, this is an interesting conversation that we can start about displacement and how you will be displaced if you fucking scratch that. But in the meantime, have you been to Beirut? Have you given to the reconstruction efforts, et cetera, et cetera?
But it's funny because a lot of people, when they come for the first time, they get sort of nervous walking around the house and like what they can do in terms of like, where can I put my glass? And we're just like, oh my God, just really relax.
I'm a little more like, that table is one of my favorite things in the world. And Ulysses is like very chill, especially during dinner parties, and people have like, you know, like uncoastered beverages on there. And I'm like, maybe that's a bit too far. However, look, you can see the table is like, you know, it's meant to be used.
It's beautiful. I mean, the first time I came over, I actually sat in this room and I was like, do we have a human condom that I can sit at this table in? Because It looks very, very nice. But that was the thing. Like, I think that when you have people who are comfortable with their surroundings and they've not just done this to impress people or to kind of like front, this is actually things they genuinely enjoy and they want their friends to enjoy them. You can be a little bit more relaxed. And honestly, if you're worried about every little coaster, then like, don't buy it, if you're going to be spreading that much.
No, but I can be a furniture dealer. Like I do this all the time. Like every piece that I find, I have to restore. So at the end of the day, like if there's scratches on the table, I got a guy here. He buffers it. We're good, and we continue to live our lives. It's just it's more important than that. Like the sort of way that we use our house and that we entertain. It has to be. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense to have any of those things.
Well, one of the things,
luxury and necessity.
Right. What'd you say, Graham?
I said it's not that these things are a luxury, they're a necessity, and they're a part of how we live our life.
Absolutely. And I think that that's also something I want to talk about is that you both have very strong design views, both beautiful and kind of very well researched and very well informed, and you're very curious people. But, in a relationship, two strong-willed, strong opinionated people can often come into conflict, and yet you've been able to kind of create something together that potentially that it's perfectly complementary. How was it like to kind of, say, we're going to put our heads together and create a space that's beautiful, distinct, and yet cohesive?
Well, this is a very interesting place for you, for the camera to alight, because Ulysses can explain these shelves, but before, these shelves had probably like one object on them. I am the object person, and so that little thing that looks like a sort of flower pot is actually like a 5th century BC Egyptian terracotta piece. The yellow thing next to it is a famous Czech glass. I forget his name, but one of the LACMA curator can tell us. That yellow vase is a Czech, an important piece of Czech glass from the 1920s. The glass underneath it is Roman glass from sort of 1st century to 3rd century AD.
Those aren't shot glasses. Those are 1st century.
And also, there's certain points where I put these things out and he just has like a heart attack and goes, my beautiful shelves. I was like, they're also, Sergio Rodriguez did not design these just as a sculpture. Like we can put other sculptures on here that complement it. So it is very much a kind of back and forth dialogue about like what I am able to put up and then what Ulysses takes down when I go on vacation or when I go to New York on business.
I'm much more of a
Louis bourgeois eye benches than like head photos on the right.
It's like maximalist, minimalist, and yet you meet in
exactly. And it's a give and take at the beginning. And you should have seen our first house.
Take away and hide.
Oh my God! I wish I had a picture to show that first.
If we go
when you walked in, that the beautiful Sergio Rodriguez. So this is a Zalzupin credenza. The table is also Zalzupin. And the shelves are Sergio Rodriguez.
Yes, if we go into the
if you go into the entry hall, there's another Sergio Rodriguez shelf.
It looks kind of like a surfboard. Yeah, we'll come around to it in a minute.
So that shelf is one of the most beautiful, exquisite pieces of Sergio. It's solid rosewood. The hardware is so gorgeous. It's such an amazing piece. In our previous house, when we first moved here,
it had like an amazing collection of like ceramic vessels.
You could not see
25, 30 different vessels of all kind of like.
You could not see an inch of the wood. You could not see
a couple
any of the hardware.
I love this glimpse into the dynamic.
Yeah, so this way, so I was like, oh my God. And so Ulysses, when we bought this house, first of all, Ulysses has like zero poker face. If you ever would like to take some money off this man, like feel free. So we walk in this house and we both loved it. And Ulysses' face was just like, oh, yes, go find the real estate agent now. And I was like, you're going to need to like step outside. Like you're going to need to go outside. Like that face, we're never going to be able to negotiate. Because he's just going to be like, well, that one wants it. Let's like get the other one down.
Right.
And so we both saw this space and we're like, oh my God, the shelf can go there. And he's like, we can put the table there. Like all of this. And this house is funny because it's not necessarily for everyone in that, every single wall that can have an artwork on it has an artwork on it. And so it's it's very much about this ability to find a way of expressing ourselves within a house that really does feel like a gallery. You know, I don't know with the people who buy this after us when we move on. I'm really hoping that, you know, it's not just like their collection of like 1950s Bond movie posters.
And there was an actual, when we bought the house, we didn't do a lot of renovating to the house, but the little bit that we do was to add as much art walls as we possibly could. So the dining room,
like Ulysses did these beautiful like 27 layers of like velvet black floors, you know, so that it was something that really, it is a baseline for us to be able to play around and let the artwork speak for themselves.
So where the big piece next to the table, the Sonia's manager is, it was a fireplace that immediately had it closed because I knew we needed that wall for that piece.
If we go into the dining room,
exactly. So that was a fireplace.
Oh, wow.
So we closed that for that. Where in the other room, where the
if you come into where we are sitting now, if you come into the dining room and the queer sex room.
How you could have seen from there. Oh, that.
Yeah, so that's what you can see there, the Carol Dunham.
The Carol Dunham. So that was a wall that we had put in for that as well.
Hunted father.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's... Go on.
No, please.
Yeah, so I mean, you know, we're going to get into, I think, one of my favorite rooms. We're approaching my favorite room of all the prints. But one of the things I like, and it's like listening to you both, and like, you know, you direct Hauser and Wirth, you're, you know, a fantastic Brazilian, very, you know, loves good art object, furniture dealer, and yet you then, you know, sitting at breakfast and looking at this, I dare I say, prolapse somehow individual. I mean, it's like, if you look at the first two rooms, you're like, these people are beautiful collectors. They understand, you know, beautiful objects. They're somewhat minimal. And then you see something like this, you're like, but these also people have a good sense of humor. They don't take their spaces too seriously. Like, what have been some of the reactions from people like coming through your home and then sitting down to have breakfast and looking at an asshole?
And I also just on the first one.
Well, Ulysses' father sits with his back to this painting because on the other side of this painting is a very beautiful Brazilian painter, Ulysses De Santi. I mean, Mule is the painting with the sort of cunted father figure from the 1950s. I think also very good to talk about this on Transgender Awareness Day, where this is, I think in a way, it's sort of this sort of attack on the patriarchy. I mean, Tip, the painter, is a straight white man, but I think the manner in which he approaches sexuality is it comes from this sort of like liminal place in the subconscious. But he, you know, this sort of started out as the series before this examined this sort of father figure with the hat, this sort of professorial gentleman, but he had this like dick for a nose. Tip doesn't talk so much about the manner in which this sort of arises, but in a way he sort of like zoomed out for this series. And this was the first of this series. You know, the Whitney has one of these paintings. And the idea that this sort of father figure with this sort of like delicate sort of tattoo in the place that one might find on a stripper or whatever, this sort of, the idea of this sort of an intimate but slightly decorative tattoo. And then this sort of used cunt that has this sort of like spider's legs that sort of superimposed where the father figure's normal genitalia might be. I mean, it's a fucking intense painting.
It is. Well, yeah, if you're going to bring people into your home, you know, especially a home as beautiful as this, you have every right. And I think that, like, for people, you know, who are watching this, kind of who have yet to establish collections of any kind, it's like your collection is an extension of your values, of your identity, and, you know, put it in people's faces. And if this is how you want to do it, then I think that that is a perfectly wonderful way of doing that. It certainly doesn't let people skirt around the issue, you know.
No, I guess the word that I was sort of like grasping for straws, I don't know why, maybe it's because I just took a nap, was privilege. Like, we are very privileged to be where we are. And that is something that, you know, from the charities that we support to the people that we have come in, it's like there's equalization that needs to happen, and there is something great about walking in and seeing this painting and being like, oh, okay, cool, this is not exactly what I was expecting. You're like, great, this is a good entree into the queer sex world.
Yeah, and this collection, like, yes, exactly, because when I met Graham, so we've been together for 7 years, and he was living in London by the time we got together. And at the beginning, there it is. But at the beginning, I remember in London, he had, I think, what was it? The 2 carry quads, 1 carry quad?
There were like 5 pictures that I had hung salon style. And it was the house was sort of like a little bit of a rabbit warren vertically. So like on the top floor was these 2 guest rooms. And my father was coming to stay, and I had just done them, and I was like, I don't know what to hang here. And so the drawing actually of Mule, the Carol Dunham painting, I have on the other side of the wall. And I hung like 4 or 5 things, and my father was just like, "Oh, this room's nice." Like, kind of, and he like looked forward, and he was like, "Whoa, okay." I'll just sleep on that. And it was kind of a joke. My father has been incredibly accepting. There was not like, it wasn't like, my father's not like a homophobic.
No, and even when you said that my father sits to his back, that has nothing to do with that. It's again the most supportive, wonderful.
Oh, he is. It just means it's also like a lot for like a 72-year-old Catholic man.
It's a lot for me, and I'm a very out there gay 36-year-old, So yeah. I mean, in the best way possible. I think that this is even
it's
just
a good place to alight. I don't mean to interrupt. Sorry.
No, go for it, please.
Just because this is so right here. You have, and it's a mixture for us, and for me, I am granted the one who drives this, and generally be like, Ulysses, look what you bought. But, so right here on the left, in the center there, you have Robert Mapplethorpe, who is someone that I studied and I really enjoyed when I was younger. And I think the more that one looks at Mapplethorpe, there's a very famous, Glenn Ligon was there and came over to the house with Paul Sepoya. And we were having this conversation. I had just bought this. I don't think it was up yet. And I was like, oh, look, I bought this because this is from the infamous Black Book. And it's Mapplethorpe used a lot of the ways in which he placed himself in society in a sort of buffer in a very brilliant way. I think the ways in which he used Black men now is very problematic. I think it's difficult to just present this as like, hey, this is a Black dude with a big cock. So I actually asked, and we have, Paul's actually bringing them over tomorrow. And I also commissioned Clifford Prince King. I don't know if you know him. I think I showed them to you before. I think we put 2 of them on the sofa because that's actually when Clifford and Paul are going to kind of reimagine this wall, because I didn't feel comfortable just having that Mapplethorpe there being like, hey, we're 2 white dudes and we like pictures of Black. It's like there needed to be it's buffered. So these 2 Clifford Prince Kings will kind of go around, and a Paul Sepoya will kind of like ring fence in a way the Mapplethorpe, because there's a lot of they're putting them in conversation. I don't necessarily, and granted, I don't want to like get into all that, but I think that when there are these documents historically, especially in art history, of abuse, of power, of issues of racial, gender, sexual misconduct. These are things that we have to address and also understand that, yes, they're a product of a moment, but it's how we discuss them and put them into context today that is important. So to that end, we have drawings from the 17th century that are these like Catholic imagery of like saints getting, penetrated, shall we say. So there's like Saint Sebastian's. And I put that right next to a cowboy sitting down on a giant dick next to it. The Tom of Finland is next to the 17th century.
Above the nipples.
Is next to a 17th century Italian piece. There's a great, the queer Japanese photographer, doing this sort of gender normative picture of him as Marilyn Monroe with like a kind of fake dick coming out. There's all these different ways, and some of these pictures are tender moments of intimacy. Some of these pictures are fist fucking. Some of these are just dicks. Some of them are like the beautiful male nude, and it's really from 1500 to today. That one up there is Louis Fertino, and it's just like a beautifully drawn image of 2 dudes fucking.
Are those dick prints like almost like a baby foot?
That
Yeah,
is a
that's a
Brazilian
Brazilian.
artist. That's from the 70s. That's amazing. I love him.
Is that a self-portrait?
Yes.
Yes.
Nice.
I just love the one pink one. You're like,
He was amazing.
and the
He's-
one, sorry. And the one to the left, it's this little, it's sort of like an offset that looks like a photograph is actually this really beautifully drawn, almost this like pointillist drawing. Michael Leonard, who's a British artist. The one where the guy's head is being shoved into a jockstrap, that belonged to Keith Haring. That just came in the show. So there's all these like really fun connections, and we're constantly buying. The little painting that's a little blurred out with the image, with the
This one?
light there, is like a Chinese artist who I found on Instagram and started following me. And I basically like had him, I bought these 4 paintings, and it was just amazing because he was translating everything with bubblefish, and it took us like literally 6 months for him to be able to get them out of China because of these things. He had eventually sent them to Hong Kong, to my old office. And like the secretary was like, oh, okay, like grab it back up. And, like,
this must be Grahams.
Okay.
Well, that's another question. I think that for, obviously you guys are deeply involved with the art world and have a lot of relationship with artists and gallerists and dealers. So it's enabled you to, amass a collection that is somewhat intimidating. And if you think that this is like the only way an art collection looks like an art collection, it could be very unapproachable. But I think that, what would you guys say to people who are, someone like me who, is kind of getting more and more relationships in the art world, who has a little bit of money to spend, but needs to be a lot more careful about kind of like when they pull the trigger? Like, how did you guys begin on this road? I mean, a lot of these things you've amassed over, your entire lives, not just in the past few years. So what's your advice to people kind of like the future Grahams and Ulysses, or the ones who are year 20?
Well, from the design perspective, I mean, as much as I love all the artists that I work with, I mean, most of them, all of them are dead. But I love the period that I worked with Brazilian modernism. But I think it doesn't have to be about that. I think what I want to see when I walk into a home is just originality. I know that sounds so cliche, but it's just, the thing with like the same French chair that,
but that genre chair, you can buy at Restoration Hardware now for like $500.
And you go from the richest collector in LA to anyone in any part, and like everyone has that chair, and it's just like, I don't care about the price of the chair. I don't care. It's just, I just want something that I haven't seen before.
Everything else, yeah.
So it's just like, and even the Brazilian for me is just, I grew up around it, so like those pieces are not necessarily unknown for me, but they're interested in the context of America and of LA because it's something that is not, it hasn't been overly done out here. So I do like that. I do like that you will walk through our house and see pieces of design that you might not have seen in another place. And I don't think that has to do anything with the designers of the pieces. I mean, I love them. They're beautiful, but I would have been happy just with a beautifully designed and executed chair by an anonymous artist person
that you bought
that you exactly
like at the Rose Bowl. Yeah.
Didn't see before anywhere else. It's just like, I think it's getting away from the idea of conformity, which is kind of where everyone tends to go in this city for some reason. It's just like everyone wants to have the same design pieces, they want to collect the same artists. And it's just, it feels so joyless, and
it's not interesting.
It's not interesting, it's not inspiring, and it's just, again, I would rather collect an anonymous artist, someone no one has, but a piece that I absolutely love and that it really had something to say to me, than just collect another chair because everyone else in town has that chair. So I think from and I think from art as well.
I was gonna say it's very similar with art. I think that there are, there was an old sort of adage that like people started with prints and photographs, and that this was somehow sort of like, oh, well, now you can buy a painting for under $1,000 or $10,000 or whatever your budget is. I think my nephews, I buy them art, and Damien Hirst makes these beautiful prints. Richter makes these beautiful prints, and they're just like, if there's something that speaks to you, if you love Glenn Ligon, he does these amazing editions of 1,000. There are ways to make everything approachable. So if the idea is like, oh my God, I could never own insert the artist that you had on your wall when you were younger. There's something wonderful about approaching that. But I also think that someone's collection should say something about how they live their lives. So if we are two queer people who are trying to make a difference or at least be socially minded human beings, of course we're going to show a lot of our queer art around. But it's like, there's things on that wall that, I had to have because they were important. And there are things on that wall that I got for $150 or were a gift. It's not about this hierarchy of cash coming from a big gallery where it's like, oh, well, like, one of the most prominent walls in our house has a painting that wasn't particularly expensive, but like
that boy
was important. The boy wanted.
The boy wanted is a gift, and it's literally a sign from a diner in the 1950s. Yeah, that a friend of ours.
I love that.
Gave.
This is by an artist named Nash Glynn, and this is a drawing of her boyfriend. And her boyfriend, and I just thought it was the most beautiful thing because it was so intimate, and I think especially in terms of the process of lovemaking in various different states, the hands, the caress, whatever is so important. And I didn't fully understand the drawing until we had a studio visit, and it's hard to see there, but there's this sort of scar that runs along. It looks like a cord along this hand here, and it actually is. This is where her boyfriend has taken skin off of his hand, his forearm, in order to make his penis. So that he is a transgender, actually doctorate student. That he is literally becoming a surgeon in order to build a better penis. And there's something that's amazing about the intimacy of this drawing, about the reality of this drawing. There's a wonderful sort of slippage there with like a traditional anatomical drawing. It feels like an old master. And yet there's something that is so intimate about this area of skin for everyone, and so specific about for this one person what that skin can do. And it's something that that is queerness to me. So that's like one of my favorite. And each of those drawings has a story. Sometimes I just looked at them and got hard. Sometimes it had to be something that like went with another dialogue. There's 50 more pieces on the way, and so we're going to need to figure out.
We're closing that little hallway. We're closing that down so we can continue on that wall.
I'll bet.
That's going to be a wall, so we can continue down a little bit more. But another thing is actually, and it's little auction houses as well. Like we find Llama is amazing. Llama. Like it's amazing. We have found so many great things there. That easel in the living room, the Angelolelli that we have behind the bar card, we got there. We got some amazing like the Elvis White Kelly.
We have a lot of originals. For me, I'm not going to be. I will be shocked today where I will be able to buy an Elvis Kelly painting. Yeah. So in the meantime, there's beautiful prints from the 1960s that are fantastic, and those are upstairs in a guest bedroom that I often go and like look at. I'm next to a Charles Gaines piece because it's like all of these resonances are great, and they were like $1,000. And granted, I'm not saying that $1,000 isn't a lot of money, but it's like when people can save up, you can buy these things. I'm after the Richard, oh my God, reaction from Gemini Bell. Oh, Richard Serra.
Serra actions from Gemini.
And then all of the process that he does in his main, I think they're more interesting in a lot of ways than the unique pieces. And they feel, and every one of them, they do feel like unique work. It's incredible. Yeah. So there's also, there are great places like, there are amazing auction houses that are not necessarily Christie's at Sotheby's.
Well, what's great to watch about you too is like how passionate you are. You know, I mean, the fact that you guys could talk about your collection for, forever, and I think that you have enough pieces where, you revisit them and it is a different story, and you're constantly finding out even new contexts to even examine work you've had for a while, like the Maplethorpe. And I think that for some people, I think that my advice would be kind of figure out what you like. First of all, it doesn't, what you say about originality, it's like you figure out what you like, not what you can copy off of some collector you admire or someone you think is like written up in the right magazine or whatever. It's really about your own aesthetic. And then what do you want to say? Because, buying things is a statement. Supporting an artist's point of view is a statement. So what kind of statements do you really want to stand behind? And whose careers do you want to develop? As collectors, Ulysses, you talk about the artists that you work with are all dead, but you have seen how their work has impacted kind of people and places throughout time, which is really interesting. And Graham, you've have relationships with artists that when you some of them were famous when you found them and you've cultivated something based on that. But a lot of people, you've been a part of their kind of growth and their blossoming of their career. So kind of how does that feel as a collector to see people reinterpret, old work in exciting ways, or people whose careers you met at one place and now they're in the moment?
Well, one of the things that kind of encapsulates that is, I worked with Julie Meritu a long time ago, and she did these amazing prints of Gemini gel, and I had my brother buy one of them, and it was really wonderful because he and my sister-in-law had met Julie and were like, she's amazing. Mm-hmm. And, Julie just did this amazing print for Project Angel Food that was like, if this had been with anyone else, it would be like $10,000. And she did like an edition of 40 for $1,000. It's like, those are the kind of things where it's like, if you're following the artist, if you're following these charities that are working in the LGBTQI plus communities, it's like, if you follow these individuals, these careers, these sources of goodwill in the community, there's interesting ways for that to like come in. So you have an artist that wants to support this charity, you want to support that charity too. And there's just ways that these kind of happen and they come out. And artists are more engaged than any other profession. So it's somehow it's like you participate in all of that, and you participate in the way that you want to live your life. And that's what your art should say about you. And there's all of these different ways in.
Instagram is kind of amazing with the thing where they sort of, by the algorithm, and they recommend all this stuff to you. And the amount of artists that I send to him on a daily basis that just shows up on my feed, whatever. And I'm like, oh, there's some.
And ass.
Yeah.
Sticking out.
that Google knows.
Yeah. But they are, but we are so blessed with the Graham, especially relationship with artists. Like one of the most amazing things was Sarah Morris allowed us to use one of her paintings to be in our wedding invitation, and that was just like
it's amazing. It's really lovely.
And it was like from a series that she did in Rio, because we got married in Rio, and it was one of my favorite paintings. And yeah, we're very blessed in that sense as well, like those relationships and those friendships, and it's important. It's important. Yeah.
Well, it's very dynamic. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for kind of stepping us through such a beautiful home, such a beautiful collection, such a beautiful relationship of two beautiful men. I think what's really interesting is, if you as you continue to collect and your house continues to change and your relationship continues to change, none of this is static. I think that what's really exciting about you two is that you're constantly building on what you have. And so, visiting this room 2 years from now could look completely different, or could kind of have very different work around some of the more seminal pieces. So it's an inspiration. I can't wait till I can invite you over to a dinner and have something that I find important to discuss and outrageous in my dining room. And so I think that kind of the example you guys have set about creating something eclectic that only you two could collect and showcase together is really wonderful. So thanks a bunch. This has been a wonderful conversation. I can't wait to see how this develops.
Come back when we read.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, I will. I'll be coming back as often as you let me. Best believe.
Yeah.
But Graham, Ulysses, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.